Video game films have a negative connotation immediately associated with them. While there are a couple decent films like Mortal Kombat, Silent Hill, and the most recent Tomb Raider film, none of them have broken away in the same way comic book films have. And while I personally feel these are typically problems due to bad scripts, low budgets, and too many executive hands in the pots, that's not what this video is about. I thought it'd be interesting to take a look into the history of video game films and the troubled productions that have led to their bad reputation. What's up guys, I'm Dave Klein, and let's dive into the curse of video game movies. But first, make sure to subscribe to Universe for more great content such as breakdowns of Legion, tons of info on the Avengers, or recaps of Rick and Morty. To start, we begin with the first live-action adaptation of a video game, a film based off of one of the most popular franchises of all time, and one that would symbolize the atrocities that would come. I'm talking Super Mario Bros. And I think it's important to talk about the Super Mario Bros. Film in depth, partially because it shows just how much can go wrong, and because it started the trend of bad gaming films. Back in the late 1980s, when Nintendo was king of video games, and an NES was in roughly one of every 4 American households, Minoru Arakawa, the then head of Nintendo of America, was looking for various ways to expand their properties both for profit and for increased exposure to the American public. This led to multiple marketing campaigns, including Mario being put on 2 billion Pepsi cans, as well as a couple TV shows, the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, first airing in 1988, and Captain N the Game Master in 1990. Bill White, director of advertising and public relations for Nintendo, came up with the idea to try making a Super Mario Bros. Movie, and pitched the idea to Arakawa, who advised him to look into it. And things started off surprisingly strong. Dustin Hoffman, whose kids loved Nintendo, wanted to play the role of Mario, but was turned down as Nintendo was interested in Danny DeVito for Mario, although his agency CAA contests this. Fox pitched the concept Nintendo turned down, and finally, a deal was struck with Jake Eberts and Roland Jaffe and the company Leitmotiv to produce the film. Leitmotiv hired Barry Morrow, the co-writer of Rain Man, to write a script, and David Snyder, production designer of Blade Runner and Pee-wee's Big Adventure, also signed on. And that was when the cracks started to form. Danny DeVito turned down the role of Mario, and even though Tom Hanks offered to take the role for $5 million, Nintendo shot this down as well. Leitmotiv initially tried to hire a relatively new director, but distributors refused to finance the movie. They then went with Rocky Morton and Annabel Jankel, creators of Max Headroom, which is when production went especially sour. With the new directors and disagreements between them, the producers, and Nintendo, multiple scripts were tossed with changing writers, with rewrites performed on the supposed final script also by multiple writers with completely different tones. The original script was more of a direct lift from the game, and I thought, well, we all know the game. Wouldn't it be interesting to create a game that was kind of darker and was the true story? That's why it's different. You know, the characters are slightly different and everything because the story was discovered by the Japanese and they reinterpreted it, but got a few things wrong in the actual video game. And if this is starting to sound like a clusterfuck, it's because it was. Finally, Bob Hoskins was brought on as Mario, John Leguizamo as Luigi, and Dennis Hopper as King Koopa. Disagreements led to yet more rewrites during production, and Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo hated working on the film so much, they decided to start drinking on set, and Leguizamo accidentally crashed his car, injuring Hoskins, putting him in a cast. The production schedule is completely thrown off, and the intended climactic ending of Mario using a bob-omb to destroy King Koopa had to be cut and replaced with him shooting Koopa with a gun. Shigeru Miyamoto viewed the film before release and decided it wasn't a big deal as no one would confuse the film with the game anyways, so the movie went on to be released.
Whoa, cool!
And with that, video game adaptations started off on shaky ground. But with video game popularity rising, more adaptations were to follow. In the mid to late 90s, more major franchises were turned into films, all to varying degrees of success. Double Dragon, Wing Commander, and Street Fighter were adapted to poor results, and on the higher end of the spectrum there was Tomb Raider and Resident Evil, which Mike will defend to death for some strange reason. But the standout and the most fondly regarded was Mortal Kombat.
It has begun!
Which is way better than Resident Evil, Mike. In aggregating 32 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, it sits at 34%, making it the highest rated video game film along with Resident Evil until 2010's Prince of Persia, and was #1 in the box office for multiple weeks after its release. But while adaptations were slowly improving, both with hits and misses, a storm was brewing. A storm by the name of Hurricane Boll. To get to Hurricane Boll, we first need to talk about the German tax shelters. Stick with me here, as I know taxes can be a little boring, but it will pay off. To break it down and make it a little more simple, For a number of reasons, Germany passed a tax code to benefit rich financiers who would invest in major German motion pictures. This, in theory, would be to help incentivize the growth of films created by and therefore portraying their own culture. To be clear, this isn't unique to Germany, but Germany was special in that, unlike other countries, the cast, crew, and shooting locations didn't have to be German. The film just had to be owned by a German production company. In the case of Germany, the benefit to the investors is that they get to write off the taxes for whatever they spend on a film. And while that's all fine and good, where there's a way to exploit something, you can trust that people are going to find a way to exploit it. A big Hollywood movie would come to a German shell company, give them temporary rights to the movie for the estimated cost of the movie, and then buy back that movie for a heavily discounted rate. This way, the rich German investor could write off all of that money as both a loss and a tax write-off and possibly save money, whereby the studio just got potentially millions of dollars for free. So, in essence, a German investor is paying a chunk of money in order to pretend they own a movie, so they can avoid paying even more money in taxes to the German government. And with these German tax shelters, enter Uwe Boll. If you don't know him, he's infamous for making some of the worst video game adaptations in history. And several of them, in fact. His repertoire, consisting of movies mostly released in the 2000s, includes House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, Blood Rain, Postal, Dungeon Siege, and Far Cry. All of which I've had the misfortune of seeing. Don't ask why. And if you're wondering, House of the Dead was funny bad, but Dungeon Siege was by far the worst and not even funny bad. Just please, don't watch it. There is no redeeming factor to that movie.
Tell me, Duke, what do you know of a man they call Farmer? Make it happen. I cannot wait any longer!
While a few of these did make their money back, several of them showed no return on investment. So why would an investor take the risk on such movies? And as it turns out, Uwe Boll himself revealed part of the way he financed these duds, at least at first, was via the German tax shelters. According to Uwe Boll in the commentary on Alone in the Dark, quote, "Maybe you know it, but it's not so easy to finance movies in total. And the reason I'm able to do these kinds of movies is I have a tax shelter fund in Germany, and if you invest in the movie in Germany, you get basically 50% back from the government." So why specifically video game films from Uwe Boll? Well, according to himself in an interview with Polygon, quote, "I got House of the Dead and it made a lot of money. My investors after this only came in with money if I would make a video game movie." Of course, this wasn't the only way he was able to finance these films. He would frequently film in cheaper locations, and he would sell the distribution rights to the films as the titles held weight. Uwe Boll finally stopped creating films based off of video game franchises, and it's not clear if this was in part due to them slowly failing to make back returns on investment, or because a 2005 law was finally passed in Germany to end the tax shelter loophole. Either way, Uwe Boll claims, "The right to buy video games for movie adaptations got higher and higher, and the market went lower and lower. That is the reason I felt we should walk away from the market." While Hurricane Bull did finally leave the market, what he left in his wake was a shattered reputation of horrible video game adaptations. Since then, we've seen a mix of studios attempting and typically failing to make a good adaptation. Obviously, that'll depend on your own taste, as I personally enjoyed Silent Hill, and I know several people enjoy the Warcraft movie. And you know what? Prince of Persia and the newest Tomb Raider, those were okay. Not great, but okay. Recently, video game studios themselves have also become more involved in the process. While in several of the aforementioned films, game studios would simply give their license to a film studio, that's become less of the case. Assassin's Creed, for example, was co-produced by Ubisoft. Jean-Julien Barnet, CEO of Ubisoft Motion Pictures, states, and excuse me if I'm mispronouncing the name, "We want to be sure that we're not taking too much of a financial risk, but that we're still very involved on the creative side." Warcraft, meanwhile, seemed to be a case of a lack of focus, too many studios, and too many opinions, at least according to writer-director Duncan Jones, who stated, "Warcraft was a unique circumstance with no way around it. Too many voices, only because that was the nature of Warcraft. Then there was also multiple studios. There were producers changing during the course of the film. It was a very messy political situation." On the flip side, Warcraft is such a vast franchise with so many elements, many felt it lacked focus and felt the issue was Duncan Jones changing the original script penned by Chuck Leavitt. Either way, it's clear between the budgets and involvement of the actual game studios that the properties are being handled with more care. And hopefully we're finally starting to see the turning point. The most recent Tomb Raider adaptation has been the highest rated video game film adaptation to date by a large margin, with a 50% aggregate score on Rotten Tomatoes. Nintendo of America confirmed on Twitter they're in the works on an animated Mario feature in collaboration with Illumination Entertainment, the studio behind Despicable Me. And in February of this year, Paramount put out an official press release stating a Sonic the Hedgehog movie was slated for a November 2019 release. Supposedly, the film would be a merger of live action and CG. Because that'll definitely work and not be awkward. So there you have a quick, or maybe long depending on your perspective, history of video game films and the curse that's been affecting them. I'm hoping that Nintendo's new Mario film will be a huge success and tons of fun, as it'd actually be kind of cool to see the franchise that started the curse of horrible game adaptations breaking the curse and proving a great film adaptation can be done. But what video games do you want to see turned into films? Or are you far too scarred to ever want to see another film even attempt to be made? Also, do you have any guilty pleasure video game films, like Silent Hill is for me? Let us know in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter @TheDaveKlein, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.